Let's learn something really quick.
If you got the time, absolutely. And you got the discipline, there's no question about it.
I love that. Yeah, that's a great practice to put into your everyday life, you guys.
You generally regret the things you don't do, not the things you did do. Let me say it that way.
Mic drop. This was just awesome. I love meeting my guests in person, and it's a whole nother animal, and the energy is just electric. You guys, this is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. What is good, everyone? This is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, bring incredible guests from all over the world, so sit back, relax, and tune in. My next guest is an amateur Muay Thai fighter, kickboxer, TV host, producer, writer, public speaker, and the protagonist of the documentary Taking the Fight. Please welcome Stuart Dansby. Stuart, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Deanna. I appreciate it greatly. It's truly my privilege to be here today.
This is going to be quite the conversation. I don't think what the audience knows what they're in for. Your story is beyond incredible. You are a great representation of breaking through labels and barriers, any self-limiting beliefs, defying the odds. You went on a journey about 9 years ago, creating this documentary, Taking the Fight, that is now on Amazon Prime, Apple TV, a bunch of different platforms for people to buy and stream. Can you tell us a little bit about what the documentary is all about and what you want the audience to get from the documentary?
It starts when I was taking my very first fight, and I'm going to speak very candidly. And I'd been training for about 6-7 years in kickboxing, and I was supposed to test for my black belt test in kickboxing. And I looked at my coach, Greg Choplin's 3-time world champion, and I said, "Do you think I'm ready to be a black belt?" And he said, "I have a different take on it. I don't think you can be a black belt until you've taken a fight." And Deanna, he turned and he walked away. If you ever had a great mentor or a great coach, they know how to climb inside your head, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I stood staring at his back, and in my head, I'm like, "You mother, you just called me out."
Yeah.
The thing that I'd always wondered about and sometimes fantasized about was right there in front of me.
Yeah.
And this was my moment of truth, right? And I knew I could like blow it off. He'd never bring it up again. Listen, at this point, I'm in my mid-50s. I have a lifetime of chronic injuries. I have every reason why I wouldn't start fighting. Nobody does this.
Right.
But I knew at that moment, there's times in our life when we get to define who we are. And more importantly, we get to define all we want to be.
Yeah.
And I think one of my greatest fears, and this might surprise you, was staring across a ring in her cage at another man who had the skill, the malice, and the desire to render me unconscious and to do it in front of an audience. That scared the hell out of me.
Yeah.
But I also knew that at that moment, I would never be more alone, right?
Yeah.
And so I made up my mind at that moment what I wanted to do. And throughout that training camp, and training camps are brutal, right? You're training twice a day. You're literally getting beat up from all the sparring. You're cutting weight, which doesn't help your personality.
Yeah.
You're cutting weight, right? You're not eating the way you want. And they're just a grind, right? Throughout that, people were coming up to me and saying, "You're inspiring me." And honestly, I looked at them and I'm going to be candid. I'm like, I'm trying to knock a motherfucker out and not get knocked out. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, that was my reaction. It didn't click with me.
Yeah.
The age, because I was always sparring.
And that's a good thing, though.
Yeah. It doesn't get in my head. I think that guy's got a great low kick. That guy's got a great jab. How do I counteract that? I'm not thinking that guy's 20 years, 30 years younger than, who cares, right? That's not how you could think, because one is an obstacle. The other is a challenge, right?
Yeah.
And that's how we shift our perspective. And you know that
Yeah.
as well as any human. So that kept happening. And then I entered a tournament and I was able to win my first fight and get to the finals. I'm not going to sneak out the whole documentary here, but in that tournament, I lost in the finals against a 20-year-old. And the moment the fight was over, he said to me, he looks at me like the moment the fight's over, he says, "How old are you?"
Yeah.
That's what you've been dying to ask me?
Yeah, right.
So I tell him, the referee holds up his hand as the winner, and he grabs my hand. Yeah, he grabs my hand, holds it up, and he's literally crying. And he looks at the audience, and I'll never forget. He says, "This is
Yeah.
this is your champion. And it moved me so much. I'm getting goosebumps there.
Yeah,
As
I'm
I'm walking
tearing
off
up.
that mat, as I'm walking off that mat, grown men were coming up to me out of the audience and holding me, guys I didn't know. And they were telling me crazy things. And at that moment, I made up my mind and I said, I'm going to back up for a moment. One of my coaches is a 3-time world champion. The other one is in the MMA Hall of Fame. I have 2 of the highest level coaches in mixed martial arts and kickboxing. They're opposing coaches. The only time they see each other fight is they're on the other side of a ring or a cage. They come together at one moment to coach this amateur hack fighter. That's the only time they're together. And I said to myself that a legion of pro fighters that would literally, the UFC guys, drop me and look at me and go, get up and come back at me. Literally kick my ass with love. And I said, God bless me with a journey that I shouldn't have.
Yeah.
I need to pay this forward. I need to show people how to achieve your dreams and what you have to do to get there.
Yeah.
So that was the impetus of how this started. And then from there, it just kept going and going.
Yeah.
Does that kind of answer your question?
Yes, and I'm like tearing up over here. I hope my makeup doesn't start running. So if you guys are watching this, I'm sorry, but that just gave me all kinds of incredible feels. So paying it forward was creating a documentary around your journey. Is that what you thought? Yeah.
Yeah. And we worked really hard to make sure this wasn't a fighting documentary. This was not to appeal to athletes or fighters. They'll get it in a moment, any athlete.
Sure.
But we all have a fight. We all have things that hold us back from what our dreams really are. We all do this. We go, I don't have the resources to open my own business. I don't know. I don't have the money to do that. I believe to. I don't have the money to. Right. I can't be a good parent because I had shitty parents. So how could I be a good parent? I shouldn't have kids. I can never be in shape because I've always been heavy and I've never been athletic. Yeah. We all do things that
all those labels.
Those labels. You say it more succinctly. We all put these labels in our head of who we should be. And we're all told, let's be real, we're all told there's things we can't do in some form. It might not be direct, but it's there, right? And that plays into our psychology. And so what Taking the Fight is how do you get out of your own head? Because especially in America, the people and the resources that you need to succeed are all around you. But guess what? You ain't accessing them until you give your dream that, I call it, I want it more than I want to breathe energy, right?
Yeah.
And there's an expression from my former idol, John Paul Mitchell Hair Products.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Clearly my former idol, okay? In case anybody didn't do the math there, why is he your former idol? But he had a great expression that I read, and this was in the 80s, and it was really simple. Successful people do what unsuccessful people don't want to do.
Yeah.
And that plays through my head to this day, because every time I say to myself, I don't want to train another round. I don't want to work on the documentary anymore because I've already put it a 10-hour down. I play it and I'm like, what do you want in this life? And that's what I mean by give that dream that I want it more than I want to breathe. Because sometimes it's not that you're not going to die. We lose our perspective. But do you want to give it that extra energy? And when you do that, again, I gave you the example of my coaches, right? Those people and resources will come forward. And then when you give that more, those people, if you give them more, they're going to say, holy cow, this guy's giving, I got to give him more. And my coaches are personally invested in me with love. We're like brothers now. But how did that happen, right? And I train on, and this is true, it's not just fighting guys 30 years younger than me. I have a right knee that doesn't have an ACL. That's what holds your kneecap from popping out sideways. I have grade 4 bone on bone, grade 4 arthritis. The last surgeon that was in there about 7 years ago, when I came out of surgery, he looked at me and he said, medically speaking, and I quote, I cannot explain how you can walk on that knee.
Wow.
Much less train, much less fight. My left knee, surgically repaired ACL, grade 4 arthritis, so it's a little better. I have a degenerative disc in my neck that is so bad, I have to get it shot full of Botox to train. And then what's cool is my doctor lives close, so every time I get the Botox, I run home really quick. I put a pillow in the corner and I stand on my head and I do this. And I push the
I get Botox, so I know. I'm a Botox girl. My husband doesn't too, so no, I get it.
Maybe
For different reasons. For different reasons.
Yeah, exactly. And I have asthma. So again, I have every excuse
Wow. Yeah.
why from somebody else's, you shouldn't do this. It's one of the questions I get asked, like,
Yeah.
why do you do this? How does your wife let you do this? Those are the questions that I get asked. But the point is, if you have that dream, you can achieve it. But it starts here.
Yes.
And then it goes directly into work ethic, right? And it starts with the key to what we can achieve and the happiness we have within those achievements comes down to a simple mindset perspective.
Yeah.
Do we view things as problems and obstacles, which subsequently puts a label on them, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I walk up to you and I say, yeah, we've got a problem.
Yeah.
Like automatically in your head, you're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. Our stress level, heart rate goes, you're like, oh, right?
Yeah.
If I come up to you and I say, hey, we've got a challenge that we can solve, but I need your help to do it.
Yeah.
It's not just a rephrasing of that voice tone, but it's also, okay, it's a challenge. Okay. And we, the team, we can do it. Right. And that's the other thing, because I got to be truthful. I did not accomplish shit. We, the team, accomplished winning a championship at the age of 62 against a 32-year-old. We, the team, accomplished an award-winning documentary that was screened nationally and internationally. And that is all the team, because I didn't do shit, man. But you've got to put those people around you and give them.
You were the driving force, though. And and like, because of your belief in yourself and that not wanting to be defeated, like you said, people were attracted to you to back you up, and you were the driving force. And when you go after something just with everything you've got, things just line up for you. I'm living proof of that too with my show, my podcast, and the things I've been through. Like, I've experienced a lot of setbacks and traumas and stuff, but I didn't let that false narrative of I'm not good enough, I can't do it, take over my desire to continue to drive forward in something new.
People probably look at you and the success with your podcast and your upcoming shows, and they say, what, she just woke up one day and that's who she was.
Yeah,
they do. That's what they're like, oh yeah, of course she's successful. It's Deanna, of course.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like, that's not really how it works. I wish it was. You said something really deep, and it's something that I had an epiphany of. But it took me, if you said, why did it take 9 years to make this documentary? Part of it was I would start and stop. And after my last fight, my wife asked me, finally, she said, you're a champion now. You know what happens. Wives have a really good way of both humbling their husbands and asking us questions we can't answer. And she said, they're going to send killers for you. What else do you need to accomplish? And I was like, I need to keep fighting. And she's like, no, what else do you, like, what else? You know how this ends if you don't stop at some point.
Right.
I'll never ask you to quit training. I'll never ask you to quit sparring because I know you love it.
Right.
But I'm asking you not to fight again. If you do, I will be there. But you need to understand that when you go through a training camp and your knees are so swollen that you come home and you literally crawl up the stairs, when you come home and your head split open from the kick, sometimes I think, what if it hit his eye? What if he gets brain damage? And you need to understand, I go through a training camp with you. And I always, because she was always in my corner. We all have people like this in our life.
Yeah.
She was always there, literally in my corner for spiritual support. I was like, she's going to be happy about this, like I did, right? But she gave me that moment where I kind of stepped back and she said, you don't have to give me an answer now, but I'm asking you. And what I realized as I stepped back, I said, okay, what do I do with this energy? And what you just said hit me. Like, you have to be the driving force of this documentary, and you haven't fully put all of your energy into it because you're fighting and because you're doing the documentary and you have a full-time career. And so I had that epiphany, and I'm like, you have a great partner in more post-productions, but you have to drive them with respect and appreciation and grace and gratitude, right? And I realized that at that moment. And it's interesting that you really say that. Truly, you've lived it, because we have to be the driving force of our own dreams. No one else is going to do it for us. You can pull those people in and they're a resource and they'll help, but you have to give them something in return too, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a great observation on your part. Really is. Interesting.
Yeah. During those 9 years, what were the resources that it took for you to get the filming done, to get the editing done, to just kind of get it launched and streamed on all these different platforms? And not only that, but being shown and viewed at different film festivals, because all that takes money. How were you able to make that happen?
Yeah, that's a compelling question. My wife and I had done a television show about 15 years now. Small show, got into some regional networks, ran out of money. But I forged a relationship with a guy named Carlos Arieta, who owns a company called Roar Post Production. And so after that first fight that I told you I had this epiphany, I went to Carlos. I said, I need to meet with you. Because he always said, if you have another project, let's talk. And I sat down and I poured my heart out like this, like I am for about an hour and a half. And the first thing Carlos said to me is he said, this is not a story of fighting.
Yeah.
I said, what do you mean? He said, it's a story of love.
Mm-hmm.
And that just kind of washed over me. I'm like, wow, he's right. He said, it's a love of your teammates, love of the sport. It's a love of a dream. And I said, okay. He said, okay. I said, Carlos, I'll fund this myself. I'll fund this documentary. And he said, okay, what you just described to me, a full-length feature documentary, you'll fund this out of your pocket. I said, yeah. And he goes, do you have $250,000 in your pocket? I said,
holy cow.
I said, I won't fund this myself. This came out of my mouth immediately. And he said, and I looked at him and I said, but I know you're a hardcore businessman and you didn't say no, you're still talking to me.
Right.
And he said, look, here's what we're going to do. I love it. I believe in it. We're going to do this when my guys and girls are free. Because if they've got paid projects, I'm not pulling them out of that. When they have time, we'll do this. So that's how it started.
Awesome.
And it went slowly because I tried to end it. Like if you watch the documentary now, I tried to end it about halfway through. But the story wasn't told because the story continued with another fight that became a championship fight. And I was trying to end it. And this is probably going to sound corny to a lot of people. I honestly believe my goal here is to help people. It has been from the very beginning. It's not monetary. It is to help people change their lives. And I really think God kind of went, dude, you're not ready for this. This story isn't told yet. You got more to do. So as I focused on my fighting career and my career, making a living in the corporate world, I would kind of lose focus on the documentary, but we weren't funded. And then I would call Carlos and I would say, hey, I'm fighting again. We want to film this, which is this added layer of pressure. And like, yeah. And I'm like, shit.
Yeah. I got it.
There it is, right? It's like, I just told you what it's like, that fear of stepping in that
for sure.
We're going to film it, right? Now you're like,
even more pressure. But that makes you want to show you have, like, even though you have the fear, it's like reinforcing just showing up for what you started.
That fear, you know this. That fear is what, okay, I'm living outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
That fear is growth if I can turn it into courage, right? And that's what courage is. It's that fighting back of that fear. It's not taking somebody's lunch money you can't fight back. It's that moment where you're like, I'm going to get my ass kicked, but I'm still stepping forward, right? And so it took that long. And then when I took my last fight, I was not planning on it being part of the documentary because we were still trying to wrap up in post-production. We went through numerous editors. And then as I was doing an interview for that promotion, for what they call promotion day, they brought me down there like they do with every fighter. And it was a week before the fight. And they said, hey, Stuart's also filming his documentary here as they're interviewing me. And I swear to God, I just went, huh? Did you just tell me something, dude? I had no plans of it. And that's what I mean by, I think like this just wasn't my plan. No. You hear this, like you have this plan on this timetable. Mm-hmm. That's not necessarily how the universe or how God's going to allow you to have it happen. So the promoter just smacked me. So I called Carlos and I said, do you want to film? He's like, of course. And I called the promoter. He's like, this is a live pay-per-view. I can't pull any more cameras in here. What do you want?
Yeah.
I said, can I have all the footage? And he said, of course.
Wow.
The state of Florida did not want to license me. because I was a 62-year-old fighting a 32-year-old. And they literally, at first, they sent a note through the promotion, hey, we want you to do a physical. And I was like, I've never had to do a physical before a fight. They do a physical at the fight. And it's 3 pages of specific tests. I'm like, this is crazy. So I go get it done. I turn it into promotion. 2 weeks go by, no license. Promotion calls me. Okay, now they want proof of your previous fights, what promotions you fought in. They want documentation.
Oh my gosh, it's like getting alone.
They want, yeah. And they want sparring video.
Oh my gosh.
Unprecedented, right? But so I'm getting like, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. So I send it to promotion. 2 weeks go by, still no license. And I remember this. It was a Friday afternoon, about 3:00. The promotion called me. They said, now they want an EKG stress test, and they want a bleed out test, which is a test to see how fast your blood.
Right.
And I said, how long do I have to do this? And this is a Friday afternoon. They said, by Wednesday, you have to have it in or the fight's off.
Holy cow.
And I'm going to tell you how I went. And this is for our watchers and listeners. Immediately in my head, I said, this is ageism.
Yes.
They are discriminating against me because of my age.
Yep,
If you
absolutely.
listen to what I did at that moment, is I chose to become a victim. I chose to go to a victim's mentality and be helpless. And I called my wife, Stella, wanting sympathy. And Stella is a better teammate than she is a sympathizer. And she says to me, she didn't even say, baby. She said, dude, if I am the state of Florida looking at a 62-year-old fighting a 32-year-old on paper, I'm getting as far away from you as possible.
Yes.
You're a liability. From their point of view, they probably think you're going to die in the cage.
Yep.
And then she simply said, you're a fighter. Beat them. Beat them at their own game. And she reached the cancer of self-doubt that I had allowed to come in. She cured it, right? You just said, like, that's what I needed. And I said to myself, okay, that's it. You want me to fight to prove I'm a fighter?
Yep.
I'm going to do it. And you start calling places to get an EKG, and they say, sure, as long as you have a cardiologist written prescription. And I'm like, what? I don't have a heart problem. Every place I call, like, yeah, you need a cardiologist. So I drive down to my GP's office Monday morning, and I probably came in hot, right? I'm like,
Yes, I'm sure.
I need this.
I would.
I need this bleed out test, and I need an EKG stress test, but I don't have a cardiologist. They do me after that. She's like, Stuart, first off, give me the coffee. Here's some decaf. Just, and then she says, hey, tight. She comes back. She leaves for 5 minutes. She comes back. She says, we'll do this test now. Here's the good news. We share an office with a cardiologist. Like,
Oh, thank God.
luck.
Yeah.
But you can call it luck. I call it, like, again,
Everything was lining up.
Man,
Everything was lining up. There's always going to be obstacles to get to our end result. And our challenge and our tests are getting over those challenges to get there. It doesn't mean that it's supposed to stop us, but it means, like, we got to show up. We're being tested, and we got to pass the test. And so, like what your wife was trying to tell you, you got to pass the test, man. Let's go time. Let's go. Let's show them.
you hit it on the head. So I sent that in. I get a call from the promotion Wednesday afternoon. Go sell some effing tickets. You just got your license, right? So that was the moment. But what I didn't realize was, because I had gone through that, and because of the promotion told me later, the way you conducted yourself, because I didn't voice any of this. It was just, and the way you've always conducted yourself, because they followed me on Instagram. They said, we're making this a title fight. And it was like, and we're making it the main event. And I was just,
oh my God.
no, like, how could this happen? And it did, right? And then again, after that fight is when I switched, okay, let me take that same energy and now be, to what you said, now be the driver of bringing this message to fruition. So we did that, and I spent the next year finalizing it. And we went through 5 or 6 different editors because they weren't telling the story right. And my honest fear was that this came across as this narcissistic, look at me, I'm the shit journey. And the message didn't get delivered. And the first couple of edits, I would watch it like, oh,
yeah. Oh, it's not what you wanted.
No, it's just horrible, right? And we finally found an editor who, believe it or not, had worked with us 15 years ago
on our TV show, and he came to Carlos. His name's Peta, and he came to Carlos and he said, "Hey, no, Stuart, you're looking in L.A. You're trying to hire these guys on the West Coast.
Yeah.
I know him. I know his story. Give me this."
Yeah.
And like everything in this whole story, Carlos says to him, "But you've never edited a documentary. This is different." He said, "I can tell the story.
Yeah.
Give it to me." And what I also realized in this process was I hadn't given enough of my own personal money. And I kept trying to hire inexpensive editors.
Yeah.
And they would do a shit job. And I just said, okay. And I went to Carlos and I said, "Here's what I'm going to pony up. I need you to do the same." He said, "You got it." And we did, right? At that point, we're so personally invested.
Yes.
Right?
Sure.
That it just happened. So then we got it done. And as we're finishing it, Carlos's son, Nico, who's 16 at the time, watches it. And Nico writes hip hop. And he says to Carlos, "How are you going to score this?" And he says, "Well, I'm going to use music that we'll buy." He said, "Give it to me." And he said, "Nico, you write hip hop. This isn't you." He said, "Give it to me." So Carlos gives him 10 minutes. He says, "Go see what you can do." Comes back. He calls me. He's like, "You got to come over." So I come over and we listen. And Nico ends up scoring this whole thing and won 4 awards for best original music score. But the remarkable thing is when Carlos said to him, we all screened it as a team, and Carlos said to him, "Why did you want to do this?" And he said, "Because when you watch the documentary, it's about living outside your comfort zone. And I knew this was going to be so uncomfortable and so hard for me to do. And that's why I knew I had to do it." Right?
Yeah. Wow. For
So we finished
16,
it
that's pretty. For 16 years old, holy
remarkable.
cow, he's ahead of the game. Way ahead.
Yeah. And that's also when you realize that the message resonates with anybody, with a 16-year-old. I had a 75-year-old come up to me at film festival and say, "I still have more living to do. And now I see how I have to do it." Right.
Yep.
So in 2023, in June, it was finished. And then to your point, the process of entering it into film festivals. And when I tell you that we got into 26, what you don't hear is that we got rejected by 75,
Wow.
maybe 80. Like,
Wow.
and for the first 6 weeks, I would just get nope.
Yeah.
I'd get the email day after day after day. And I talked to a good friend of mine who works for a big agency, and he said, "You're the executive producer, right?" I said, "Yeah," along with Roar Post. He said, "Film festivals hate that. Even though it's a true story, they're going to look at you as the executive producer and say, he twisted it. It's his story now." He's like, "I'm not telling you what to do." And I go, "Got it." So I called Carlos and I said, "Take me off as the executive producer." It was hard to do because I'm so proud.
Sure. Well,
But I
right.
knew it's what we needed to do for the team for us to be
Yeah.
successful.
Yeah.
So we spent the last year in film festivals building the value. And then in January, we started to reach out to distribution. And again, I probably contacted 25 different distributors. And I think 6 of them said, "Yes, we're interested." So my point is in sharing this with our audience is that on every little bit that you can say there's success,
There's a lot of
this is the true story.
Yeah.
This is a true story. By my estimation, I've lost 20 rounds of sparring for every round that I win. I've literally gotten my ass kicked 20 times to move forward 1 time.
Yep.
And that is the lesson of not having limits, of not having labels, right?
Yeah.
That, like you just said a minute ago, expect it. Absolutely embrace those moments.
Yes.
I had a moment in my first training camp and I was exhausted. It was a Friday afternoon. I was probably on my 8th workout of the week. My knees were swollen like balloons. And I've got a 125-pound guy. I fight at 170, but I'm sparring against, literally just kicking my ass. And he keeps kneeing me over and over and over. And then all I could think of, Deanna, all I could think of in my head that day was, God, I just want this to be over with. God, my knees are so swollen.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm so exhausted. That's all I was thinking about, right?
Yeah.
We trained for like 2.5 hours before we started sparring. At the end of that session, all the other fighters pile into the ring and they start doing a round of ab work, right? I avoided. I'm like, I'm done. I'm going home. And Greg comes up to my coach and he says, "What's wrong with you today? You look like hell. What's wrong with you?" I said, "Just excuses." I said, "Dude, I'm doing the best I can." He takes out his phone. He says, "Is this the best you can do?" And he filmed the last round of sparring. And I looked like, remember what I just said I was thinking?
Yeah.
That's what I look like. I look like a guy
Have that
who didn't
defeated
care.
attitude.
You can see it. And I'm letting a guy 40 pounds lighter than me just kick my ass.
Mm.
And he said, one more thing. And this is a really good lesson for our audience. Why didn't you take the ab class with the rest of the fighters? And I said, Craig, my knees are swollen. I'm exhausted. I did 600 abs yesterday. My abs are sore. It wouldn't do me any good. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I'm sore. And I swear I remember this day. He puts both hands on my shoulders because he's almost yelling. Greg never yells, but he's pissed. His voice changes and he says, you don't get it.
Right.
You're supposed to be exhausted.
Right.
You're supposed to be tired. You're supposed to be sore.
Yeah.
Because if you're not, then you're not a fighter.
Yeah.
You're not getting better.
Right.
And you'll never be a champion. He said, but here's the difference. Here's the difference. So this changed my life. You got to want that. You got to wait for when you can't breathe. You got to wait for when it hurts. You got to wait for when you're overwhelmed. And you have to wrap your fucking arms around it and embrace it.
Yeah.
That has to be your moment where if all you do is get that much better, then you win.
Yep.
But right now, I don't see a guy who wants that. I see a guy who's focused on how hard this is, not how much you love it. And that moment changed my perspective.
For sure.
And subsequently, it changed how I think, how I act, and what I was able to empower myself to achieve. Does that make sense?
Absolute sense. You're taking the fight. Got 31 awards, right?
Yes.
Including Best Featured Documentary, Best Inspirational Documentary, Best Sports Documentary, Best Biographical Documentary, Best Direction, Best Editing, Best Original Music Score. Amazing. With all that being said, Stuart, where can people find you, connect with you, and stream the movie?
So I am on Instagram, just really simply Stuart Warren Dansby. It is synonymous with Taking the Fight. Everything about my IG page is everything we've been talking about. It's the same exact message. TakingTheFight.com. Anybody can contact me there. And of course, you can watch the film on Amazon Prime, iTunes, and Apple TV. Those are both the same thing, but not everybody realizes that. And also on Google Play. And it's on all those channels streaming right now. So you can access it there anytime you want, 24 hours a day.
Yes, absolutely. You guys, I'm going to put those links in the show notes. I'm also going to put the link to the trailer for the movie. So if you're interested in checking it out, go check the trailer. Go click the links. Go follow him on Instagram. Go purchase the movie and support this incredible journey. And it's a great example of what we all are capable of as long as we can get out of our own way. Stuart, this is the part of the show where I like to ask for last words of wisdom or advice. What would you like to leave with us today?
There's a mantra that I live by every day, right? And it's simple. Rise, grind, function, and achieve in gratitude. And my last little bit is understand something. We all have a fight.
Yeah.
So simply do what you love and be your own inspiration.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Woo, Stuart, man, you made me cry throughout this interview. Like, oh my goodness, so moving, so powerful, and just such a great example for the world, right? And, you know, success doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes it might look like it, but people don't see is all the things that happen behind the scenes. And hopefully that's what they get to see watching your film. Stuart, thank you so much for taking us on the journey with you and in your 9 years of investing in this powerful message. We really appreciate you.
Deanna, thank you so much. Truly a privilege and an honor to be here. I greatly appreciate it.
You're welcome. You guys, this is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, don't forget to subscribe, follow, rate, review, comment, share, all those good things. And I'll be back soon with more dynamic guests.